Thank you. The topic for my presentation is building a community of common destiny with its neighbors. Sounds like a slogan, but I just want to borrow this from official literature to show how the priority on China's foreign policy agenda has shifted to relations with China's neighbors. Now, when China opened up and reformed in late 70s and early 80s, the priority of the foreign policy was given to relations with the West, the United States, Europe, and Japan, for obvious reasons, because China needed access to their market, investment, and technology. And then, starting in early 21st century, the leadership in Beijing decided that more attention should be given to relations with our Asian neighbors. And mostly in the first 10 years of the 21st century, the focus has been on regional economic cooperation with ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia. Now, 6 or 7 years ago, another decision was made by the leadership in Beijing that even more attention and resources should be channeled to relations with our neighbors. And we, as China rises, it should make the neighborhood more secure and prosperous, and reflecting the slogan, building a community of shared destiny. Now, to give you a basic ABC about China and its neighbors. If you look at the map, it's easy to understand that China is really right located at the center of Asia. And also, if you look at the map, we have 14 land neighbors and another 6 maritime neighbors. Altogether, about 20 countries are China's maritime land neighbors. That means China lives with most neighbors than any other country does in the world. Sometimes you will say this is good news because you have so many neighbors, that's lively. But from a Chinese perspective, this may be somewhat unfortunate. Why? Because all these neighbors, from North Korea to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, and to countries in Southeast Asia, many of them are neither developed economies nor stable countries. So that means we not only have a crowded neighborhood, but also a very complex security environment. And more than that, we have 4 nuclear neighbors, okay, Russia, India, Pakistan, and North Korea. We live with more nuclear neighbors than any other country does in the world. Okay, how many nuclear neighbors does the US have? 0. China has 4. Okay, so if you wake up in the midnight and thinking of this, hard to get asleep again, right? But in China, don't worry, we sleep very well. We are getting used to that. Now, on the other side, Asia is also becoming the major engine for global economy. Today, Asia contributes for over 50% of GDP growth in the world, and China alone contributes more than 30–40%. So Asia is also a major region for economic growth in the world. And in fact, Asia becomes more and more important today, to China today because 5 of China's top 10 trading partners come from Asia, including Japan, South Korea, Taiwan as an economy, Hong Kong, and also Southeast Asia. And also 5 of the 10 major investors in Chinese mainland come from the region as well, including Japan and South Korea and Singapore. So the neighborhood is not just a security challenge to China, but also a major source of economic cooperation for China. So that explains why the leadership in Beijing in the last 20 years began to shift more resources and attention to relations with our neighbors. Today, China is the #1 source of investment to Hong Kong, Mongolia, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, while the US is the #1 source of FDI to Japan and Singapore, and Japan is the #1 source of investment to South Korea and Thailand. And on the trade side, China today is almost is the largest trading partner to almost all the Asian economies, with some very few exceptions. So that shows the strong economic ties between China and its neighbors. Now, in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to address 3 major challenges confronting China's Asian policy. One, how to expand regional economic ties after the financial crisis in 2008, when the economic relations with the West has relatively declined, and including today with ongoing trade war with the United States and growing protectionism in other parts of the world. So China naturally looks at Asia as a major economic partners in the future. Second, how to deal with security challenges in Asia. As I said, this is a very complicated security environment, and we are facing both traditional and non-traditional security challenges. And finally, China still has maritime disputes with some of our neighbors, from Japan to countries in Southeast Asia. So how to manage those disputes? On the economic side, people already in the morning brought up the idea of Belt and Road Initiative. I think this is so far the most ambitious geo-economic program ever raised by rising power. And for China, I think this draws inspiration from the Asian Silk Road, which connected China and other part of the Eurasia landmass. And also the maritime Silk Road developed in Song Dynasty also connected China with Southeast Asia, eastern part of Africa, and some parts of Europe. Now, much has been said about the Belt and Road Initiative. I think the most important thing is that China, drawing on its own experience, believes that for developing countries, infrastructure holds the key to the economic development. On this point, I may disagree with Professor Huang from MIT, who doesn't believe that infrastructure is really that important to economic growth. My hometown is located in Anhui province in China, in a mountainous, remote region. So I still remember when I entered Fudan University in Shanghai in 1982, I basically walked from my home. It took me about two hours to walk from my home to the county seat, to take the bus to the nearby port, then take the train down the Yangtze River to Shanghai. So there was no electricity, no tap water, no paved road in my village. Now, things began to change. Gradually, when electricity was made available, people began to purchase household appliances. Okay? When road is built, people began to buy motorcycles and automobiles. That means infrastructure promotes consumption, which is good for economy. And also, there is a famous saying goes in China for many long time, 要致富先修路. If you want to get rich, you need to build the road first. And for all the local governments in China, if you want to attract investment, the first thing is you want to make sure that 3 things are ready: power, electricity, tap water, and road. Without the 3 elements, it's unlikely you can attract investment. So that is the Chinese experience, how you can improve the local economy and improve the living conditions of villagers in the countryside. So drawing on this experience of its own, China believes that for most Asian neighbors, the #1 challenge for them is how to improve their infrastructure. I went around to many of our neighbors in Asia, Vietnam, India, and others. Most of them complain that the major bottleneck for their economic growth is infrastructure. Okay, without good infrastructure, no investment will come. And also, it's very hard for them to promote, to expand trade relations with other countries, including with other regions in their country. So Belt and Road has a lot of things, including roads, highways, ports, power plant, and also manufacturing, industry parks, etc. But it is primarily related to transportation and telecommunication. So the challenge, of course, to promote Belt and Road is how to raise funds for such huge infrastructure projects. And China initiated the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, and so far over 19 countries have proposed to join, and 68 of them have been approved, and with a fund of 100 billion. So that is AIIB, which doesn't necessarily work exclusively for Belt and Road, but developing infrastructure in Asia is a major mission for this bank. And also China unilaterally set up the Silk Road Fund, which is commercial, unlike AIIB, which is intergovernmental multilateral financial institution. Silk Road Fund with for $40 billion, providing support to infrastructure development, resources exploitation, and industrial cooperation along Belt and Road. In the future, this may be open to cooperation with investors from other countries. I will skip some of these figures to just, people talk about the problems, challenges confronted Belt and Road program. It's something new. And as I said, that's the most ambitious economic project ever raised by Rising Power. And China does not have much experience of investing so heavily abroad. There are many challenges: political, security, economic, financial, social, etc. So in the last several years, there have been a lot of progress made, but also some setbacks. So as one thing goes, learning by doing. I think China is gradually learning from the last year, the experiences over the last several years, and making some adjustments. So that is about Belt and Road. One figure I want to mention is that by June 2018, the cumulative Chinese investment in countries along Belt and Road has already reached $70 billion. That is the latest statistics. Another thing on the economic side is to negotiate FTA arrangements with our neighbors, including upgrading China-ASEAN FTA. In 2010, FTA arrangement between China and 10 South Asian countries came into effect. Now, when this was negotiated, the bar was relatively low. So several years after that, both sides decided we need to raise the bar by upgrading the FTA arrangement. And also under negotiation now is China, Japan, South Korea FTA, which is important because China and Japan are the second and third largest economies in the world. And most ambitious FTA arrangement now under negotiation is called Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which includes China, Japan, South Korea, 10 ASEAN countries, Australia, New Zealand, and India, which will be the most popular FTA arrangement in the world. Hopefully, by the end of this year, the negotiation will be concluded after several years delay and suspension. So that is something I think China has been working in recent years to promote stronger economic ties with Asian neighbors. Next, let's move to the security side. I guess you're familiar with this picture and know who these people are in the picture. Korean Peninsula is the primary security challenge to China in the sense of traditional security. And for many years, China has run into a dilemma. On the one hand, we joined the United States and other countries passing resolution in the UN Security Council sanctioning North Korea for their nuclear program. And that somehow alienated North Korea, a traditional ally from China. But on the other hand, the Americans, Washington, keep blaming China for not being tough enough on North Korea. So China was really caught in the middle. Basically, I think China's policy on the Korean Peninsula is one, denuclearization. Second, stability. So the turning point really came in March 2018 when relations between North Korea and the United States began to change. And also relations between Pyongyang and Beijing passed the most difficult time in 2017, featured by 3 visits. So far, already 4 visits by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to China. And the first time when Kim came to Beijing, President Xi gave him 3 reassurances about the Chinese policy towards North Korea. One, China would guarantee their political survival, the regime security. That's the single most important concern for North Korean leaders, and also the major reason for them to develop nuclear weapons. Two, second, China would help with their economic development. Okay, for many years, China has been trying to encourage North Korea to follow China's open up and reform agenda, but were rejected by North Korea. This is the very first time North Korea expressed a sincere interest that they want to learn from China by undertaking serious economic reform. Third, China would encourage and support their program for denuclearization and improving relations with the United States. So I think today China is playing a very unique role on the Korean Peninsula. As we are meeting here, Kim Jong-un now is taking the train, traveling in China on his way to Vietnam for the next summit meeting with Donald Trump. And before that, he already visited Beijing to meet with President Xi, talking about the DPRK US relations. So I think if in the next 2 years, a major breakthrough can happen on the Korean Peninsula, that will help a lot elevating the security pressure on China in Northeast Asia. So that's something we do have a lot of stake in the neighborhood. The next challenge is as the US reduces its troops in North Korea, in Afghanistan, and then maybe gradually withdraw all the troops from there, how to stabilize Afghanistan. So that is a map showing that even though we have a very, this is Afghanistan, that's China. So we have a very short common border with Afghanistan. However, it was usually easy for some of the terrorists in either Afghanistan to penetrate into Xinjiang, or for the separatists in Xinjiang to sneak into Afghanistan to receive training there and then come back to conduct terrorist attacks in Xinjiang, in China. So even though the US can come and go, China has been has to be a neighbor to Afghanistan. And what China is doing now, we are trying to provide security support to the incumbent government in Afghanistan by helping training the police, providing weapons, short of sending troops to Afghanistan, which I don't think China will make that kind of decision. And also, we are trying to mediate between the Afghanistan Taliban and their government and promote a political reconciliation between the two sides. So Afghanistan remains a major security challenge for China on the west side. And last year, the year before last, China was able to bring Afghanistan and Pakistan together for a trilateral dialogue. Because if you want to solve the problem in Afghanistan, it's impossible to do so without getting the support and endorsement of Pakistan. So far, this kind of China, Afghanistan, Pakistan trilateral talks have occurred 2 times or 3 times, and 3 sides agreed to cooperate on fighting terrorism in South Asia. Now, on the security side, another challenge is non-traditional security. And I think for most Asian countries today, the security concern is non-traditional, not traditional. That means very few countries are afraid of, are worried about being invaded by another country militarily, but rather, like terrorism, separatism, extremism, epidemic, natural disaster. This kind of non-traditional security threats are the common threats for Asian neighbors. And in this regard, 3 months before the September 11th attack on the US, China, Russia, along with the 4 Central Asian countries, established the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. Its mission is to fight terrorism, separatism, and extremism in Central Asia. So today, this Shanghai Cooperation Organization has expanded to include India and Pakistan. So to some extent, that's the most popular regional security organization in the world today. With the green color means that the former members, the red color, they're observer, and they could be the potential members in the future, but also dialogue partners in this Eurasia continent. What does Shanghai Cooperation Organization do? The most important thing is intelligence sharing and cooperation in law enforcement. Now, just give you one example. In August 2008, when China hosted the Summer Olympics in Beijing, we cooperated with other members in Shanghai Cooperation Organization and successfully cracked down over 30 planned attacks on the athletes, including the international athletes in Beijing. So that is just one example about how the regional cooperation within the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization worked to promote cooperation in fighting terrorism. That is the leaders' summit meeting after India and Pakistan joined the organization. That is the joint exercises among the SCO members annually, held in rotating in different member states. Another thing I want to mention on the non-traditional security is in the Mekong River in Indochina. Several years ago, a Chinese commercial boat was attacked by gangs and mafias in Mekong River. And after that, China launched the law enforcement cooperation initiative with countries along this river, including Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia. And these 4 countries, they share intelligence on terrorist attack, violent attack on the commercial ships, and also they provide escort, police escort for the commercial ships navigating the Mekong River. So that is As you can see, this is a Chinese cargo ship, commercial cargo ship, escorted by the police boat from China. So far, this law enforcement cooperation among China and Mekong River countries have provided a security environment for the economic relations. The third point is third thing I want to say is how China tries to manage maritime disputes. Mainly, the maritime disputes is one between China and Japan in East China Sea. This is we call it Diaoyu Islands. In Japan, they call it Senkaku. So this has been in dispute for many decades. But in the last several years, this issue erupted as a very sentimental and nationalistic issue in both countries. And after several years of high tension around Diaoyu Islands, now China and Japan gradually calm down the situation, and basically I think they agree to help stabilize the situation before the disputes can be resolved. Basically, I think this Diaoyu Island, this small islands, doesn't have much economic value, but it's highly nationalistic and sentimental. This issue has to be addressed in the overall context of relations between China and Japan. And so after the last several years of conflict and tension, and now is cooling down a little bit. Hopefully, we are in the process of managing this issue in the broader context of China-Japan relations. And that is the Chinese patrol boats sailing to the waters of Diaoyu Island regularly, usually twice a month. Starting from last year with the improvement of relations between China and Japan, now they go there once a month. So you can see how the improvement in overall relationship can have the positive impact on the maritime disputes. And even more complicated, of course, is the South China Sea disputes between China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, and Brunei. This issue is more complicated, largely because it involves more countries and with even more complicated status quo in this region. Now, in the last several years, South China Sea dispute have attracted a lot of attention in this region and beyond. And in recent years, I think China has successfully found a way to manage this issue. One is to negotiate with South Asian countries about a code of conduct in South China Sea, which is not about resolving disputes, but about how to stabilize the situation before the disputes can be solved. Another is that to negotiate with the respective claimants, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, about how to promote joint exploitation of resources in the disputed area in South China Sea. So tension began to reduce in the last 2 years or so. And basically, I think it will take a long time to go before a solution can be found. But before that, it is certainly possible this issue will be managed also in the overall context of relations between China and ASEAN countries. Now, finally, to conclude, some very simple observation. One is that diplomatically, China is returning to Asia after many years of paying a lot of attention to relations with the West. China is kind of rediscovered Asia, both economically and on the security side, which is very natural for China as a rising power. You need to make your neighborhood both secure and prosperous. Okay. Second is that while China devote more and more resources to its neighborhood, its influence in the region is rising, which is a good thing, because if China does not have good relations with neighbor, China does not have an active role in regional affairs, how can you talk about the rise of China if you are not so important to your neighbors and to your region? And related to that is that when China promotes regional economic and security cooperation, we are also trying to set the rules and build institutions, which may have implications beyond Asia. So like Belt and Road, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and other like the efforts trying to find a solution to the maritime disputes, which may become applicable to other parts of the world in the region. And finally, the observation about the relations between China and Asia is that the US is a major factor affecting China's neighborhood diplomacy. I didn't have much time to talk about how China handles the US factor in our neighborhood diplomacy, but certainly Obama's rebalanced Asia strategy worked a lot to get China to pay more attention to relations with its Asian neighbors. And today, I think this neighborhood diplomacy as part of what we call the major power diplomacy in China is producing some positive results in terms of promoting economic ties and helping stabilize regional security situation. However, many challenges remain. So we are still very much in the process of trying to make a neighborhood which is both secure and prosperous, so that a rising China not only lives in harmony with its neighbors, but also share the economic benefits with its Asian neighbors. So I think my time is all there, so I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Wu.